Hello, everyone, and welcome to VMblog's official coverage of the upcoming KubeCon CloudNativeCon Europe event. And it takes place March 23rd through the 26th in Amsterdam. And today we're joined by Sudeep Goswami, the CEO of Traefik Labs. Welcome to the show.
Thank you, David. Great to be here.
Maybe you can start by kind of telling us a little bit about the company. What kind of problems are you solving for cloud native teams?
Sure. Traffic started back in 2016 in the cloud native era. This is when Docker was just becoming popular. And the key challenge at the time was how do you simplify the creation of containers and the creation of applications in a containerized world and be able to seamlessly expose that to the outside world with the right security layers. And that's really what Traffic's set to solve. Now, if you fast forward to today, that problem has not changed. That problem is still very acute. But now you have to think about applications broadly, whether that application is in a virtualized form, in a containerized form, or being packaged as AI, the problems are still the same. It is about being able to seamlessly and securely expose applications to the outside world, regardless of what the underlying substrate of that application is, whether it's a VM, a container, or AI.
Getting a little bit digging in and a little more specific, let's talk about some of the pain points that a KubeCon attendee are facing in their day-to-day operations that Traefik directly addresses. What does that kind of ideal customer look like?
Yeah, and I'll answer it from two different lenses, like what KubeCon attendees have been kind of struggling with over the past, let's say, 12, 24 months. And then there's an acute problem that everybody's kind of been hit with. So I'll attack it from both those perspectives. So let's start with the broader problem. What we're seeing enterprises kind of grapple with right now are three different initiatives that are happening, and they're all happening at once. There's the initiative around migration of workloads. There is the initiative around modernization of application and workloads. And then the third one is transformation of workloads. On the first one, the migration of workloads, this is really started and fueled by the VMware reset that happened. And now people are really trying to think about how do they rehost, how do they replatform. And then also there's the repatriation exercise that is going on because of sovereignty requirements, right? So this, I would put all of this as like the migration pathways that all enterprises are grappling with. Second one is the modernization. I think this one hits more directly to the KubeCon audience than the other one, although there are some overlaps. And this is where enterprises are decomposing their monoliths into microservices. So the front end becomes the microservice, the back end might still stay at VM. So they're trying to figure out like how do they take their existing applications and modernize them. And obviously all the new stuff that's happening, they are more and more containerizing them. So there's this coexistence of VMs and containers that we see are going to stay for many, many years. So this is one broad problem that all enterprises are grappling with right now, especially the KubeCon audience. Now, if you add in the third layer to this, which is the transformation of workloads, and this is where AI comes in, and many, many applications, if not all, I should say, are trying to figure out how to integrate AI into that application, make it more intelligent. So these are the three broad, what we call arcs of the customer enterprise landscape. And where a cloud native engineer, whether it's a platform team, a DevOps team, working with your VM team, are all kind of working together in addressing this. This has been going on for many years, is becoming more and more real now. Now, the acute problem that's been introduced into this mix is the whole Ingress Nginx retirement. That was announced at the last KubeCon in North America, and now it's going to be taking place coincidentally at this KubeCon in Amsterdam, right? So the end of March is kind of like the clock stops and all support for Ingress Nginx stops. And as you know, Ingress Nginx has been powering over 50% of the workloads in the cloud native world. So that's a big event that is happening. And so this is where we have been working with customers, with enterprises in helping them figure out a pathway away from Ingress Nginx and towards a better long-term kind of viable architecture.
Now, you mentioned the challenges around Nginx. Could you possibly share like a compelling story that demonstrates the real business impact? What are the tangible outcomes did they achieve, whether that's cost savings, faster deployments, or improved reliability?
Yeah, we see the customers that are actively working on this, and I would say almost everybody's actively working on it, but I would put them in two camps. In the first camp, where the existing Ingress Nginx deployment was not as complicated, was not as complex. That means they were not using many of the annotations and the functions and features in the Ingress Nginx. They have an easier pathway to a more future-proofed architecture that is with Gateway API as the standard. So we see some customers going into that camp, but and this does not fit the pattern for large enterprise customers. And that's where the first camp is extremely important. This is where I think there is a real problem because these enterprises have been using Ingress Nginx for many, many years. And over time, the configuration has gotten more and more complex. So to propose to them to move to Gateway API as the next step is a non-starter because what that would require is a lot of re-engineering work, a lot of replatforming work that they were just not prepared for. So that introduces a lot of risk and obviously cost to the company. So what Traefik has done in this to mitigate that risk and to give more time for the enterprise to really think through what the future-proof architecture with Gateway API is going to be is to create this, what we call a bridge, which essentially provides a drop-in replacement for Ingress Nginx with Traefik that supports all their existing configuration. So that means they don't have to rewrite any of their configuration, which is a big burden taken off their shoulder, which directly maps to cost reduction and risk reduction. And so they then get the time and the liberty and the freedom to decide when they want to take the next step to a Gateway API, which is becoming the new standard for Ingress deployments. So we're working with many companies in showing how they can reduce the risk without having to do a lot of work. And so we have done a number of things on this. We have created a migration kit. We're obviously adding more and more annotation support. We're going to be launching, at KubeCon, that we're going to have over 90% coverage of the Ingress Nginx annotations. And this is 90% of the annotations that are being widely used in the market. And we have gotten this directly based on the feedback these enterprises have shared with us on what they use. So to have 90% plus coverage in such a short amount of time, I think should really help enterprises reduce their risk footprint and accelerate their migration away from from this code base and this project.
Definitely. Now, year over year, it seems like KubeCon is just exponentially growing from the number of vendors that are there to the number of attendees. It's just a continually amassing trade show event, and the exhibition hall is always packed with vendors, all claiming to have overlapping marketing and solving similar problems and challenges. What for folks who are watching this video and then the folks that are going to be attending the event, what is it that you think genuinely differentiates Traefik Labs from the competition?
Yeah. Let's start with the first topic we're just discussing around the Ingress Nginx, where we believe we have a very differentiated approach to this. And then I'll zoom out and give you a broader company view on the approach that we're taking, which is also differentiated at a company level. So on the Ingress Nginx, there are many options out there for other Ingress controllers that customers can move to from Ingress Nginx. Every single one of them requires you to reconfigure everything that you already have, based on the other Ingress controllers configuration and their code base and their environment. Traefik happens to be the only vendor that is providing a drop-in replacement with 90+% annotation coverage. So I would say that is pretty unique. And this did not happen by chance. We have been working on this for some time because there was an announcement made not at the last KubeCon, but even before that, there were some hints that were dropped that this was going to happen. There was another project that was started, which didn't go anywhere. So we had already started our work because we saw that this was happening. That was a prediction that we made. No one knew how soon it would happen, including us. So we had been preparing for this day two ops friendly approach. And that's why we were able to accelerate so quickly when the final announcement happened last KubeCon to now, which is what, a span of 5 months, which is pretty amazing to see. And I think that's the real differentiator, I would say, that makes us very unique to solve this problem. Okay, now let's zoom out. At a company level, I think we have been very fortunate to have a great open source project called Traefik, with over 3.4 billion downloads. And now I think it's 62,000 plus GitHub stars, over 900 contributors. So that open source is a strong DNA to our company on top of which we have built additional capabilities. And I think that's what really makes Traefik unique. It's the open source DNA, but then also being very methodical about adding value on top of open source. So now what we have is a unified architecture that a customer can use regardless of where they are in their application journey. If they're simply looking to expose a few applications to the outside world, they can start with our open source. If they need to centralize authentication authorization, they can move to our API gateway, and which is just one Helm chart upgrade, keeping all of their existing open source configuration intact. So it's a very day two ops friendly approach. Then if they want to embrace AI gateway or MCP gateway, which are essentially the guardrails, they can incrementally upgrade to those. There's no binary change there. And the last leg of this journey would be like API lifecycle management. And as we know, almost every application is now becoming an API to the outside world, including AI. So if you look at inferencing happens through an API. So API kind of becomes your unit of exposure or unit of application that gets exposed to the outside world. So this is the unified architecture and the differentiator value that Traefik provides is on one architecture, you can run your entire or go through the entire journey, what you have today, but also future-proof for the coming AI age, if you will.
No, it sounds like one of the big topics, obviously, is going to be around your solutions around the Ingress Nginx. What else can attendees expect to find when they come to your booth? What kind of things are you going to be planning for the event at the show?
Yeah, so the Ingress Nginx is going to be a big thing. So there's going to be a lot of kind of talk track around that, helping do live demos for people who are coming to the booth to show them truly how simple it is to migrate away from Ingress Nginx. So we're going to have our top engineers, the founder of the company will be there, along with our, engineers who are working on this project. So they'll be able to give people a real live walkthrough of that. So, that's definitely a big part of this coming event. Outside of that, all the other things that we're doing across those three arcs that I mentioned, migration, whether the migration is from Ingress Nginx to Traefik or the migration is from a VMware type of a hypervisor to a non-VMware type hypervisor and everything that Traefik is doing to enable that migration at an application layer seamlessly. Also on the modernization, we continue to drive, we are fully Cube native platform. So we continue to drive more and more functionality into that experience, whether it's routing, whether it's security, whether it's observability. So you're going to hear us talk about a number of our partnerships that we're making with the ecosystem. So traffic gets embedded into other stacks. So you automatically get that by default when you're using other partner stacks. And then the third is really around AI. And this is where you will hear us talk a lot about all the guardrails that we're putting in place because we're the gateway. And the number one job of a gateway is governance. And governance essentially is how rich your policies are, how effectively can you apply those policies at runtime, and how effectively can you observe them. So this is where we are continuing to drive more and more guardrails into the platform, whether it's for LLM governance or MCP governance. So these are some of the things that you're going to see, at a broader level at our booth.
And that kind of leads me into, my next question, where you guys obviously have your finger on the pulse of the industry, and we're seeing massive shifts in the cloud native landscape. Things like, trends of AI workloads, platform engineering, and FinOps pressure. Talking about Traefik Labs, what's on the company's roadmap that addresses, sort of where the industry is headed?
Yeah, I think it ties back to what I just mentioned around these three arcs that we're focused on, migration, modernization, and transformation. And I think this is the arc that the customer is going through. So we are directly mapped to that. We're aligned with their journey. And one thing I would leave the audience with is to think about what gives them, when you think about an architecture, knowing that these three arcs are happening, they're having to migrate workloads, modernize them, and also transform them. At an architectural level, what gives them the best operating leverage so that they don't have to re-architect, they're able to have the right control plane abstractions, and they're able to seamlessly move workloads and have less infrastructure fragmentation. And this is where I think Traefik shines in the approach that we have taken, in the architecture that we have put together. And really, it gives people the operating leverage to decide where they want to run these workloads, whether it's on-prem, whether it's on a public cloud, whether it's in a sovereign cloud, whether it's in a fully air-gapped, disconnected site. They get to decide whether the deployment is a virtualized, is a containerized, or AI. So this is the operating leverage that I'm talking about that gives people that freedom to choose rather than be forced to choose where they should run their workload and what substrate it should run on.
So great. Is there some type of a quick demo or a walkthrough of the solution that you could provide for our viewers?
Yeah, we can give you a demo of, there are many different parts to this solution, as I mentioned, but we can definitely kind of give you a demo of what the experience is going to look like for an Ingress Nginx customer that is moving to Traefik and how seamless that experience is going to be.
In the past month, we had several people asking about if they could use the Nginx Ingress into Traefik. So that's why we have created the Nginx provider. So basically, if you have a cluster and inside the cluster you have your Nginx installed with your Ingress with Nginx annotations, So you have something like this created, and you want to access to those routes, like something like this, right? You have access to those, and you want to have access to those with the same Nginx, Ingress, and Traefik. Basically, this is what I'm going to be demoing now. You can uninstall Nginx Ingress and all the different dependencies. You will keep that Ingress with the different annotations, like here is already installed. Now, of course, if you try to access, there's no Ingress Nginx anymore, so you cannot access to it. Now, if I install Traefik is going to be extracting or ingesting that information, and you're going to be able to have access now to that same service via Traefik. So basically, it is out of the box, and if you have any questions, let me know. Bye. Hope you like it.
All right. Well, Sudeep, it's been our pleasure to have you on the show. And we both, Brian and I, appreciate you taking time to speak with VMblog today.
Well, thank you, David. Thank you, Brian. Great to be here with you guys.
And for the folks who are watching this video at home, if you plan on attending the upcoming KubeCon event, we highly recommend you visit the Traefik Labs booth and learn even more. See it in action.